Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we are talking about some pretty big hints and teases we just got for some big games coming out for Nintendo Switch 2 in 2026. There are several, and they're pretty exciting, so that's what we're getting into today. Now before going forward, let me point out that I have this goal to reach 60,000 subscribers, so if you find yourself enjoying my content, I would very much appreciate your support. It makes a big difference. But now, getting into things here. So firstly, let me shout out friend of the channel Khalid Maki, who has been sending me over different updates on Next Level Games hiring for some kind of project. Now, I've been making the argument for a very long time throughout this year that they're likely working on Luigi's Mansion 4, and there's several reasons to believe this. One, Luigi's Mansion 3 was a very good game that was extremely successful. They would definitely want to follow that up fairly soon. And with it being Mario's 40th anniversary, and they're celebrating that going into next year, especially with the movie, and we've also seen with the prior movie that there was increased sales overall for Mario games, it does make sense to position a Luigi's Mansion 4 around this time. And Next Level Games is usually out with a game every 3 years, but this year, 2025, is the first time in 12 years that they have not maintained the pattern. But that still would leave one to believe that they have to be fairly close to being done with their next project. And also, we have seen that Nintendo has made sure to make available the first 3 Luigi's Mansion games on Switch 2. It does kind of feel like they are setting things up here. And so Next Level Games has been hiring all throughout the year. This could have a lot to do with them wrapping up their current project and ramping things up for their next project. So it's tough to say exactly what these hiring posts are for, but here they are hiring for a senior level designer, and what they're looking for here is someone who has strong layout skills with a deep understanding of how 3D spaces impact the gameplay pacing, and experience building 3D levels in level-based games. Now, it's possible they're bringing this person in to wrap things up so they can get out Luigi's Mansion 4 or whatever it is that they're working on for 2026, but again, it's also possible this could be for their next project. But I will say, clearly they are working on something that's for a 3D game that is level-based. Luigi's Mansion 3 was level-based and also a 3D game. So would Luigi's Mansion 4 also be a level-based game? That certainly has a high likelihood. But the person they're hiring for here, are they going to work in Luigi's Mansion 4? That part remains to be seen, but clearly it looks like whatever it is that Next Level Games is working on, we're going to be seeing fairly soon. Moving on, we just heard from Jez Corden, the executive editor at Windows Central, that the first Call of Duty Switch version is nearly done and launching in a few months. Now, people have been expecting Call of Duty to come to Switch 2 for some time already. Nintendo and Microsoft have openly entered a legally binding agreement to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo platforms for the next 10 years or so. This legally binding agreement happened a couple years ago, and we've yet to see anything. Now, Switch 2 has only been out for about half a year, but we thought we might see something already with maybe Black Ops 7 coming out alongside the other versions. That did not happen. But according to Jez Corden, there is a Call of Duty coming out in a few months, and the way it's being worded here, I would say it's being suggested that we're going to be getting this fairly soon, early on into 2026. In other words, early enough into the year, maybe about half a year before the next Call of Duty release, so that also could come out on Switch 2 around the same time as the other platforms. Now, some people might be wondering, why didn't we get Call of Duty already? Jez Corden said that you need dev kits to port, and that they didn't have them. Which some people might be wondering, why wouldn't Nintendo provide dev kits to the Call of Duty developers? Keep in mind that Microsoft now owns Activision, and Nintendo and Microsoft are working well together. We've already heard about multiple Microsoft titles coming to Switch 2. Assuming what Jez Corden is saying here is true, I would assume it's because Nintendo's been very controlling of what games they want to see come out on Switch 2 at first, controlling both the quantity and the quality, so they've been very selective about who they have sent their dev kits to. But as the Switch 2 becomes more and more available, they release more and more dev kits, so more and more games can start coming out to the platform. That's a suggestion here by Jez Corden, that it's Nintendo's fault that Call of Duty hasn't come out yet because they did not provide dev kits in time. Now, personally, what I'm curious about is, does this mean we're getting specifically Black Ops 7, the Call of Duty that just came out, or are they going to provide something else instead, and then when the next Call of Duty comes out late next year, then they just move on to just coming out with day-and-date releases? I feel like the most likely bet is Black Ops 7, but I just want to put it out there. that I am very open to the idea of us getting something else, like maybe a remaster for Black Ops 2. I just really enjoyed Black Ops 2 back in the day, but I'm going to ask you all watching, would you just prefer to see Black Ops 7 come to Switch 2 in a few short months, or would you prefer to see some other type of Call of Duty come to Switch 2 first before they move on to just bringing out the typical Call of Duty games that come out every year? Now, this next game that's getting teased here is getting teased in a very big way, I would say. It's pretty exciting, but we don't know what it is. So, Nintendo Insider conducted an interview with the Bloober Team, Piotr Babiano, and this is what we have to say about their exclusive horror title, Project M, that they've been working on for Switch and Switch 2. You have no idea how hard it is for me to not reveal what Project M truly is. But for now, it's still too early to talk about it. We are confident that we'll be able to share the first details very soon. What I can say is this: fans of Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Limbo, and Eternal Darkness will immediately feel at home. That said, Project M introduces a bold twist, one that no horror game has ever explored before. This is a vision that could only exist on Nintendo hardware. So that's extremely interesting. I have to assume that this is probably not some established IP like them bringing back Eternal Darkness or them doing something else, but I would love it if it was like a return to form for Eternal Darkness, but the very fact that he said Eternal Darkness here leads me to believe that it probably isn't that, but it might be a spiritual successor to that series. It is exclusive to Nintendo platforms here. Now, it's coming to both Switch 1 and Switch 2, which means, you know, that it's being designed with both systems in mind, so it may not be that ambitious. But Bloober Team has put together some fairly impressive games, like Chronos: The New Dawn, which did come out for Switch 2. But comparing to this project to games like Limbo, Eternal Darkness, Silent Hill, and Resident Evil, it definitely has me thinking we're in for something that's going to be spectacular. And the fact that they say that this could only exist on Nintendo hardware, that part right there does get me wondering if this is going to be like a Nintendo IP moving forward. And so whenever this project would be worked on, it would have to be only for Nintendo, but Bloober Team would be the developer. Maybe kind of like how Platinum Games works on Bayonetta and we only see it on Nintendo. Which does strengthen my hope that maybe this is some sort of spiritual successor to Eternal Darkness. And when they talk about there being some sort of bold twist, yeah, something weird, something only possible on Nintendo platforms. And thinking about things from a technical perspective for another moment here, we recently learned, like today, Christmas, there's been an update, Layers of Fear on Switch 2, Bloober Team was able to get Unreal Engine 5 Lumen Ray Tracing running at 60 frames per second. They are continually showing improvements with what they can do on Switch 2, which is promising. I'm very curious what this is. We're going to find out next year. It's certainly an exciting tease. Now, this didn't just happen, but I'm going to mention it because it did happen last week, and it's now begun to do more and more of the rounds. We did have Aonuma, the Zelda series producer, in an interview seemingly allude to the idea that they wanted to come out with a Zelda game before Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, suggesting that they may have a Zelda release ready for Zelda's 40th anniversary next year. Given Aonuma's history of teasing future Zelda projects, this feels like a very strong teaser for something exciting as well. And something else that I haven't talked about in terms of possible 2026 games that I think we should talk about is the next Metroid title. And no, I'm not talking about the next Metroid Prime title. These are two separate things. A lot of people get this confused. This is like talking about 2D Mario versus 3D Mario, or 2D Zelda versus 3D Zelda. We're talking about 2D Metroid here. Mercury Steam worked on Metroid Samus Returns, which came out in 2017, and then they worked on Metroid Dread, which came out in 2021. We're now entering 2026. Metroid Dread was the most successful Metroid title to date, and the budget for that game was certainly lesser than Metroid Prime 4, so if anything is going to be greenlit and be followed up fairly quick, it would be Metroid Dread. So it's expected that Mercury Steam is going to come out with a 2D Metroid fairly soon, and I wouldn't be surprised if it comes out as soon as next year, 2026. There's been a lot of conversation that Nintendo wants to come out with Metroid with some consistency, and the plan may be that they're going to come out with multiple Metroid titles, maybe one title every year or every other year or something like that. Getting out 2D Metroid early on into the Switch 2 generation might be a really good idea. It would be a huge opportunity to have a game that becomes even more successful than Dread. And I just get excited thinking about what's next for Samus, because following the events of Metroid Dread, Samus is extremely powerful. So I wonder how they're going to be upping the ante for Metroid 6. And so we could be looking at a pretty exciting year here if we're getting the next Luigi's Mansion 4, some sort of Zelda title for the 40th anniversary. Perhaps an Eternal Darkness spiritual successor. Maybe the next 2D Metroid game alongside other things that are already announced like the Duskbloods, Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, and the 10th generation of Pokemon. There are some big things for next year, and these are just some of those possibilities. And what's funny is that there's a possibility here that I haven't even mentioned what might be the biggest potential release that has arguably already been teased for next year, and that would be 3D Mario. Now, there's no guarantee 3D Mario is coming out next year. Some people will actually be very skeptical of this because the Mario Odyssey team worked on Donkey Kong Bonanza. However, it is believed that the Mario Odyssey team likely was working on more than just Donkey Kong Bonanza over the last 8 years, and we've seen that some key members of the Mario team were not working on Bonanza, which does lead one to believe that they are working on something else. Also, just historically speaking, there's always a mainline Mario title made available early on for a next generation, like a new Mario title, not just a port of Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, which I appreciate, but still, we're talking about something far more substantial here. And with the Mario Galaxy movie coming out, it is arguably a teaser for the next game. Now, some people might be skeptical of this because we look at the prior Mario movie, and it wasn't like we got a game that was literally based off that. However, I would argue that Mario Wonder was meant to capitalize off of the movie. The movie showed an increased emphasis on multiple Mario characters, and there were many Mario characters you could play as in Mario Wonder that were more expressive as well, not necessarily with the same exact designs from the movie, but keeping up with the trend of more expressive Mario characters. And also the very fact that they saved the Mario Wonder announcement to happen shortly after the release of the movie, Nintendo might be saving a 3D Mario announcement to follow up this next Mario movie, and given that this next movie is a Mario Galaxy movie, and obviously Nintendo released Galaxy 1 and 2 right before the movie because of that, that does lead one to believe, could the next Mario movie also have something to do with Galaxy? Could we be looking at a Galaxy 3, or something that's building off of some of those concepts? I don't think we're going to get a Galaxy 3, but I do think there's a possibility they could be playing into some of those concepts from the Galaxy games. Maybe they even go so far as to call it like Super Mario Universe, where it's going beyond just going to different galaxies, but even different universes, which, by the way, has been rumored before for the next 3D Mario. So it's just something else to consider here as a potential teaser for next year with what we've seen so far of the Mario Galaxy movie. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.